I'm Ken Fjord. Last year, I wrote a book for my son entitled The Graysonian Ethic, Lessons for My Unborn Son, in the months before he was born. Once he was born, I published the book on Amazon. He's now a happy bouncing baby, and I've decided to release the audiobook version for free on YouTube. Question everything and everybody, especially me. Over the years there were moments where I thought that I really knew something. There were times that I got really sucked into one movement or another, so much so that I really became a true believer. The benefit of hindsight is something that you do not get until you are much older, and you get to see yourself making the same mistakes in repetition. Some people never bother looking back and spend their days like an ant just following the trail left by the person in front of them. They never look back, they do not even look that far ahead. They live in the moment. Carpe diem, seize the day in Latin. For the generation that came before me, it was an extremely powerful command that meant, before you know it, if you were not careful, life would pass you by. There is wisdom in that, which is one reason why it was a saying that lasted all the way from the days of Latin until today. However, if you close your eyes and just listen to the order, then your life is going to be a lot harder than it needs to be. Criminals seize the day more than anyone. If you see someone you do not like, you hit them. If you see something you want, you steal it. If you see someone you want to kiss, you kiss them. If you see something you want to do, you do it and damn the consequences. It does not matter how smart that command is, following it blindly will inevitably result in tragedy. When I was younger, there were a number of political issues that were near and dear to my heart, and I could not imagine ever believing that the movements around those causes could become a problem. I looked at other people's political issues and was able to see with an eagle eye where a good idea had been pushed too far. But I had simply imagined that it could not happen to my pet issues. As I grew older, I got to see people turn the ideals of tolerance into something dark, whereas before it was always about simply letting other people into the fold. Some of those people eventually turned and started seeking to exclude others in the name of inclusiveness. This came to be called cancel culture, but it was nothing new. When I was a child, a young woman who had a comedy show on TV had giant boycotts against her. When I was a middle-aged man, there were new boycotts against the same woman, now in her 60 seconds, for a completely different reason. Nothing had changed except the rationale behind it and the passage of time. Even among good ideas, perversion is possible. In my time, I saw the idea of equality between people as a very good and just cause. As I got older, I saw people twist this good and just cause into something evil. All you must do is turn off all human empathy, turn off all sense of fairness, make the punishment for violating the rule complete destruction of your life, and even the most benevolent cause can become true, unmitigated evil. Power mongers will always seek out that which has power. It does not matter what that thing is, they will simply go there because there is power to be had. The people who seek out that thing do not seek it out because they care about whatever it is. They seek it out because they seek power. In the process of taking that thing over, they will pervert it and turn it into whatever they need to turn it into to get what they want. Besides the power mongers, there are also people who are just misguided. People who have not fully thought through the consequences of what they propose, yet propose it nonetheless. In my time, we have an entire movement dedicated to universal basic income. It sounds great as long as you leave out all the important parts. The idea is that you would give everybody a certain amount of money. The problem, of course, is that the money comes from somewhere. Not only that, but once you have taken away people's reason to go out and do something, a lot of them won't do anything. There have been many examples of universal basic income over the years, from the poor people on reserves to the rich people who have a trust fund. Without very carefully managing those people, to give them reason to go on, they often end up destroying their lives. Good people with good intentions pushing an idea that sounds good that will inevitably lead to mass suffering. If you are young when you read this, you are probably surrounded by a lot of things that you think will stop being so important. Everyone tells you that high school stops being important the day you graduate, and that is true. However, a lot of people continue to carry whatever baggage they accumulate during high school, and it becomes something that changes their perspective throughout their lives long after the events are over. When you are young, you will hear things that you know at the time are childish and silly, but what you do not realize is that there is not some age that people magically let go. I have seen people in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, bringing up things from their youth that in retrospect seem childish, but they take that with them as one of their guiding tenets. Old hatred, wrapped up in decades of rationalization until it looks like a completely different thing. Some people are just mentally ill. There are a lot of ways this can happen: chemical imbalances or bad experiences. Sometimes mental patterns just develop in a way that is unhealthy. People with such illnesses can say things and sound completely convinced that they are true, probably because in their psychosis they are fully convinced. Some mental illnesses have the unfortunate effect of helping the person look more charismatic. Individuals with borderline personality disorder start off by really liking you a lot. They can be so nice, but then their mental illness flips and instead of being idealized, you are suddenly demonized. Sociopaths can tell lies that they know are lies, and the way their brain is wired just makes them not care. It comes out so naturally. There are also 1,000 logical fallacies that can allow someone to jump a track at some point from good logic to bad logic. A simple false dichotomy can make a choice look a lot simpler than it really is. Attacking the person instead of the argument makes it very easy to ignore a real problem because it came from someone you do not like. Misrepresenting an opponent's argument in order to make it easier to attack is oftentimes subtle but also very effective. Social proof, which I will talk about in another essay, is a useful tool sometimes, but it is not a logical tool. Just because a lot of people believe something does not mean that it is true. Appeals to authority are also dangerous because almost every authority in the history of the world has been dramatically wrong about something important. There are people we consider intellectual giants who nonetheless were simply wrong about something important. Albert Einstein was widely considered to be the top thinker of his day in physics, but he was very much against the findings that led to quantum mechanics because of the element of randomness and uncertainty within them. Unfortunately for him, we have simply proven that quantum mechanics is real no matter how bizarre it looks. And world's most famous physicist or not, he was simply wrong. Sometimes people are going to jump to conclusions before all the data is in, and in so doing come up with the wrong conclusion. Alternatively, once there is enough data to come to a reasonable conclusion, there are people who keep on waiting thinking that there is going to be some revelation in the 11th hour that vindicates their viewpoint. Some people think that because a couple of things happen at the same time, they are related, but that is not always the case. Sometimes people think one story is enough to prove a point when the real world is complicated enough that there is a story to prove anything. But that does not make it true. There are times people come back after everything is done and sculpt their argument to fit the exact circumstances that happen. Even in true science, there are often cases where a meticulously crafted model cannot predict the future because it was crafted to predict the past. If it is too specific, it does not have any value, because the future is not the past. In some cases, people think there is a middle ground between two extremes. In fact, maybe the actual middle ground is a completely different extreme. For example, if given the choice between killing Joe or killing Bob, a middle ground would be to just half kill both. In reality, why are you off killing people? Calm it down. In other instances, there are situations where people make a claim and they cannot provide evidence for that claim, and they expect you to provide evidence of the contrary. If it is not talking about something that is not controversial like the sky is blue, that is probably fine. But if they are saying something like the sky is purple or green, then that is on them to give evidence for that claim. I have also seen a child of this fallacy where people will make ridiculous claims and then act as if it is an uncontroversial claim and tell you to go find the evidence for yourself. I have even seen it where, because the specific claims are so specific and so undisputed in the other direction, the only people specifically talking about it are the people making the ridiculous claim. And so in their echo chamber they think that they have an undisputed argument. There is also the idea that just because something is not logical, it cannot be true. The world is not always logical. Quantum mechanics is a perfect example where things that are basically undisputed in the macro world become bizarre and impossible in the micro world. It does not seem to make any sense, but that does not mean that it is not true. There is a large group of people who think they can just tell you to educate yourself. Often what they really mean by this is read exactly what I have read and nothing more and interpret it exactly how I have, or you are uninformed. These people use the language of critical thought in education, but their intentions are the opposite. You must join our cult is what they are really saying. They insist that you must think exactly as they do, and if you do not, it is not a matter of disagreement. It is a matter of you are just not educated enough. This is an incredibly effective technique of indoctrination because it is usually pointed at people who pride themselves on being well-read. It is also very versatile because it does not matter what their point is. I have seen it used to indoctrinate people into different, mutually exclusive ideologies because nobody thinks of their viewpoint as the ignorant one. Shut off your brain, uncritically accept our data and interpretation, and then you will be educated, smart, and handsome. I believe that I am putting together information for you that is, if not entirely true, at least in your best interests. I am not spending my time on this to deceive. I have no reason to want to deceive anybody, but it is simply true that I might be wrong. It is also simply true that I might have been right when I wrote it. But I became wrong as the world changed. In ancient Japan, taxes were paid with a year's supply of rice. Today, if you showed up at the Japanese tax office with a year's supply of rice, those officials might never stop laughing at you. Also, some truths are not universal. The things I'm trying to pass on have worked for me, but maybe your personal attributes are different. Talking about public speaking, it took me a long time to be able to talk in front of a bunch of strangers. Even worse, the ability to speak in front of a bunch of people that I know and to be comfortable with that. Most extroverts would not have a problem with that whatsoever. I have always had to work in order to keep my body in shape, but people with more active interests, or people with different genetics might have to really work to keep their weight on. It could be that something I thought was true, and I would not have without being deceived. At every moment of every day there are powerful forces trying to deceive you into believing something that is useful for them. Nobody on this planet is immune. Finally, everyone on the planet is human and it is entirely possible to just be wrong. Recognizing this and accepting it is an important part of growing into your own. Finally, sometimes you even must question questioning things. There reaches a certain point where a certain thing is simply useful enough that even if it is wrong, that is fine. To see the world completely without any blinders on sounds like a beautiful ideal, but if you are not careful in seeking truth, you can become despondent. The world is not always a nice place, and there are corners of the universe that are essential to your survival best left unexplored. To realize the sheer amount of suffering that is required for your life to go on the way it does, and there is nothing you can do about it, is sometimes a bridge too far. Pushing down this road is not productive. You are spending a bunch of time chasing stuff down that is going to make you want to save the world. You cannot save the world until you can save yourself. If you are ever on an airplane and there is a drop in cabin pressure, affix your own mask before putting the mask of someone else on, because if you do not, you are going to die and you will not be able to help anyone. The forces in the world that I spoke of before also have a stake in this, far from wanting to have you question everything so you can determine with open eyes what needs to be kept in the past and what needs to be brought forward into the future. They want you questioning everything important to the point that you are paralyzed and cannot act against them when they work against your interests. As I said before, anything with power can be turned from something good into something bad, and that includes the noble pursuit of seeking truth. Sometimes people are asking you to look at something important again and again and again, hoping that if you redo it enough times you will come up with the answer they want, not the answer that is true. Regardless, the simple first principle is important because over the course of your life you will be exposed to dozens of major mainstream philosophies that are mutually exclusive, but each of them holds a little piece of wisdom that you should nonetheless consider. Besides that, you will come across a different ideology in every single individual person you will ever meet, based on their own experiences and thinking, and each of those individual people may have something of value to contribute as well, but they might also have something dangerous that will negatively contribute, and so by staying focused, questioning everything, making sure that everything follows, and having an intuition about when it is time to stop questioning things, you will be best equipped to take in the new information and take what is good and reject what's bad on your own terms. Thanks for listening to this chapter of the Graysonian Ethic, Lessons for My Unborn Son. If you like the book and would like a physical copy or an electronic copy, please look it up. It's available on Amazon around the world. Barring that, please like and share with others. I'll be releasing one chapter every week, so if it hasn't been completely released. If you're interested in hearing more, you can subscribe to see when I post additional chapters.